okay, think about it this way, right? Humor is entirely subjective, obviously, okay? But one thing that I was about to say to you because of the joke you just made, if your favorite basketball player was Kobe Bryant, the day the helicopter crash occurred, RIP the GOAT, all right, would you be okay with someone making a joke about it immediately?
Okay, immediately, not. If I'm being honest, I'm fine with people making jokes about anything.
Okay,
Because
you're a
to
bad
me,
person to ask.
because I think that jokes just are. If the intention is to make fun of the person, then I think it's wrong. But if your intention is to make other people laugh, I don't think it's a big deal. Again, it's all subjective. To me, in my eyes, I don't see the need to feel offended over something that somebody says like that. In a joking tone, if somebody goes up and says, yeah, Kobe Bryant deserved to die in a helicopter crash, then I would have been like, whoa, you're wishing malice upon another person. That is where I would draw the line. But where somebody makes a joke where their intention is, hey, I'm just trying to make people laugh about a scenario, I don't think it's as bad.
Okay, now let's say I make a joke about a certain period of time where 6 million certain specific group of people died. Okay, if I made a joke about that, oh God, people do make jokes about that. Oh
All
man,
the time, man. That's just
that's true.
like I would say the main thing you're saying, like, oh, people shouldn't make jokes of things that are like close to them. Pete Davidson built a comedy career around his father dying in 9/11.
I don't think that's
You
true.
know how many jokes this guy makes
No,
about
no,
it?
no, no, no. I know that, but did his father actually die in 9/11?
I'm pretty sure. Why would this guy make that
Because
many
one
jokes
of the
about it?
jokes he said was he was one of the best pilots ever.
No, his dad was a firefighter, I'm pretty sure, who died in 9/11.
You're lying.
I'm not lying.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna fact check that
Well,
after we're
we
done.
will fact check this, but I'm 99% sure that's just no common
Actually, it's
knowledge.
funny because I guarantee you there are people out there who watch our podcast one day and they'll be like, "Man, do these people not know anything about
Yeah,
Pete
I
Davidson's
think so.
father?"
But
Like,
I'm pretty sure that's true.
interesting.
And a lot of people make jokes about his father.
I don't know. Like, obviously humor is subjective, but when is it not humor?
When the intention is malice.
But it's not always about the intention. Think about, God, I don't like using this example, and this is the second time I'm going to use it, but he was trying to make Germany great again. Oh, wow, I said it like that.
Dude, just
God
go
damn.
ahead.
Okay.
Like
Well,
we know who he is.
yeah, okay.
Like,
So he
I
was
don't
trying to
think
make
it's like-
Germany great, right? And if you think about it, his initial thought process was, I'm going to seize power and I'm going to change things and make it better. And I'm pretty sure that the beginning of his reign was actually very prosperous for Germany before, of course, he started, going a little too far with it.
Yeah.
Right? So my question to you is, what if his intention was good?
The thing is, I don't think you can compare making a joke about something to actually acting upon something. A joke isn't physically harming anybody. It's the same way that I believe in the new age of cancellation. To me it's walking a fine line, because where do you draw the line between trying to get rid of hate and freedom of speech? That's a very
true.
hard line to walk, I'd say,
Yeah.
for a lot of people. And that's why I don't blame a company for trying to I don't want to say censor, but in the end, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
They're trying to stop people from sharing their opinion because they believe that, hey, your opinion is violent. But I'd say that a violent opinion cannot be comparable to a violent action.
I was about to say that too.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's where I think
You know
the
what?
true line is wrong.
You know what? Touche. I tip my hypothetical hat off to you. You completely changed my mind. I agree.
Right?
I'd say that in general with humor, I'm not one to say that, oh, he should be canceled. Like, for example, Matt Rife. I thought what he did was absolutely hilarious. I was dying laughing for days. When Eric told me that when I was at the gym, I couldn't believe it. So I went on his Instagram to check, and sure enough, it was there. I was dying laughing, right? I think that people who do things like that, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Especially because they got offended at a simple joke.
And I think the thing is, you're entitled to be offended. That's okay. People are out here saying, oh, don't be offended. Yes, okay, you can be offended. But if there's other people out there that aren't offended by it, that's where the target audience is. It's the same way that, sure, Andrew Tate will tell everybody to become a millionaire, but that's to his target audience. He's telling his target audience, hey, you guys are sleeping, wake up, get out of the matrix, make $1 million. But to the guy that wants to be a doctor, he shouldn't be taking advice from Andrew Tate saying, hey, don't go to university.
True.
It's all
true.
subjective about who it's targeted for. Matt Rife's comedy was meant for a bunch of people who are not so sensitive to the topic.
Well, originally, I'm pretty sure he said his target audience was he was aiming to build a target audience of, well, not necessarily men, but people who enjoy comedy.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
he
yeah,
got
yeah.
famous not because of his comedy, but because of his looks. And he didn't like that. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I
sure
know,
that's
he's
one of the
talked about it,
reasons
yeah.
why he did this joke and then the further pressing on with it, because the people who get offended by that, they're getting weeded out in this process.
Yeah, and I think that with comedy, it's a big thing. I'd suggest that anybody that watches this go and watch Kevin Hart and Joe Rogan's podcast. They have 2 podcast episodes, and both of them are phenomenal. And they talk a lot about comedy on them because, of course, that's where Kevin Hart started. It was all about comedy. And with comedy, you're walking a very fine line about what is offensive and what's not, and who you're telling the jokes to. Same way, you wouldn't go into the middle of Harlem as a white guy and make a bunch of jokes that are offensive to black people because it's all about who your target audience is and where you're saying them.
True.
And I think it's sad that a lot of people nowadays can't accept comedy as just a joke, especially with the whole cancel culture nowadays, where anything you say can be used against you. And the problem is when they disregard context. That's where I believe that it's the most harmful, because one place, the probably most prominent place where context is disregarded, is the Bible. There are a lot of horrific things in the Bible if you take them at like the shortest verse or the shortest paragraph. But if you actually really read around the context, I haven't done this. I haven't read the Bible cover to cover. I wouldn't know. But from what I have seen, what I'm gathered from other sources, from watching videos and seeing things on Instagram and stuff like that, a lot of people tend to pick out like that one verse where somebody says abuse women and then or stone women, and then they're like, oh my God, look at this thing that the Bible says, and then they go back and read the rest of the passage and it's like stone women that murder people or something like that. Like, I know this isn't verbatim
It's
from what it
hypothetical.
is, but it's the premise of, hey, if you read the whole context, then you'll understand the part you selected far better.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, context is important for everything, but the reason why context is slowly becoming removed from our society and ideas that we follow, right, is because of the new age of short form content, I believe. I believe that's a big deterrent of our population's attention span and also our ability to look between the lines.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Because you see one point that, let's say, for example, Andrew Tate makes, where in a clip he says, oh, don't care about these women or something like that. And now you take the clip out of context when in reality he may have been saying, if a woman is cheating on you or if a woman doesn't support you and your dreams and your ambitions, leave her, forget about her. Maybe that was the full context of the clip. And interestingly enough, this is a bit of a stretch, but I'll throw it out there as simply a theory. What if that's something that the world itself, or maybe not the world, but governments want their population to believe, that there is nothing between the lines? And you want to know something crazy? Have you ever seen that Instagram account? I don't know exactly what it's called. It's like News Every Day or something like that. And he just shows up. He starts the video with some random clip of him doing something. And then all of a sudden he's like, did you know? And then he goes through several big name news items like a plane crash, people dying, some severe scandal that the government doesn't want the rest of the population to know, right? He goes through all these things. And every now and then I'll see one of his videos and wonder, is this stuff actually happening? Because you don't see any news coverage about it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't see anything about it.
You know what's really interesting is as we're moving towards the social media age, the news becomes less and less credible. As it's so interesting because as we get more, like, information has never been more accessible in any time period in history ever. As of, like, now, you can get information on what happened 10 seconds ago in China instantly. Well, okay, I think China's a bad example considering how secretive they are about a lot of the things that happen.
Yeah.
But so, like, anywhere on the other face of the earth, basically, you can get information on what's going on there like that. You just Google it and boom, you have it. Or it'll pop up on your Instagram or TikTok feed or whatever. Instantly. The second it happens. Like, we know what's happening tonight. Kanye's going to drop a new album. Everybody's going to go crazy. Immediately, you're going to see reviews on it right away.
Yeah.
Stacking up and stacking up. Because that's the world we live in now, where everything is instantaneous. but it's also made it easier for people to throw as much garbage as they want out there. That's just completely untrue. We've never had more accessible information as well as this like high amount of incorrect information.
Yeah. I mean, just because information is easily accessible doesn't mean it's accurate. You know, I believe that there is a lot of misinformation out there about many concepts. But overall, I don't understand what role does again, we'll never really know how far the rabbit hole goes when it comes to government operations and how it tries to control its people, you know? But the interesting thing about that is I wonder what goes through their heads, because at the end of the day, obviously the government's job is to keep themselves prosperous, of course.
Yeah.
But they do that also by making sure the nation is prosperous as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we were able to, let's say, take a full-on X-ray vision of every single plan the government ever put into action, every scandal they covered up, everything they lied to the public about. But we could also see their motives behind it. Maybe we wouldn't demonize it as much. While I believe there is such a great lack of trust between the government and the general population, maybe there are some redeeming qualities in the fact that they did these things for our benefit sometimes, not always.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's interesting because we had this conversation earlier this week where we talked about intention and about how the reason that somebody does something is very important. And the root of all problems, which is
money?
No, okay, that was a good.
You kind of worded it in that way.
But the main factor that leads to every problem in the world,
misunderstanding,
ignorance. The same thing. They go hand in hand. But I'd say ignorance that's just my definition. But I'd say misunderstanding both mean the same thing. However, people tend to ignore the opposite side of every argument, especially nowadays. You can't have a debate with another person because all of it is about proving myself right, not understanding what the other person is trying to say.
That's a powerful
And
statement.
I'd say one thing that I have seen as of late is I've been trying to learn a lot about Israel and Palestine, because to me, that's a big issue going on in the world. And when you see people defending each side, there clearly has to be a reason for that. That's the way that I think. I'm not going to look at all pro-Palestinian influencers and people and speakers, take their information and say, okay, I'm pro-Palestine. Or go all pro-Israel and say, hey, I'm pro-Israel. I would take both sides and make my own decision, which is something that a lot of people nowadays tend to lack, is the ability to make the decision for themselves. Because we all want the mob mentality. We want to be able to jump on the train and go. Because the biggest influence to us is other people.
Damn.
Which to me is just, it's scary. Because that's why you have to watch so carefully, who am I surrounding myself with? Who am I talking to? Who am I absorbing information with? Because we're like sponges. Humans are going to just absorb whatever is given to us. We don't have that big of a control over it. That's why we have to be aware of what we're putting in our vicinity.
And you want to know why that's even more important for sponges? Think about a sponge. When it absorbs material, what happens when you squeeze it?
It squeezes it all out.
It expels the exact same thing that it absorbed. So as you sit around those negative sources, you absorb this misinformation, these bad values.
Oh my God.
And then you spew it out wherever else you go.
That has to be one of the craziest things I've ever heard. It's like, I want to like carry this sponge analogy because I think it's actually brilliant. Is if you dip a sponge in dirty water and try to clean a plate, it's going to make the plate worse.
Boom.
But you dip it in that clean soapy water and guess what? You're making the sponge better and you're making the plate better.
There you go.
And then every subsequent thing is getting better. Same way, when you absorb positivity, you're going to spew it out to the next person and that person to the next person. And just imagine that chain of events. Stemming from, if you were nice to one person today, that person could pass on that positivity and that train could go so far.
If you really think about it, one kind gesture can be infinite. Have you ever seen that video of, it's an animation and it's just about the power of kindness, right? And it's this tall old guy. It almost looks like
I
Gru.
know it is.
It looks like Gru if he was super skinny, and you know how he is having a miserable day all the time. But then one day, that old lady crossing the street grabs his arm and forces him to walk with her to take her across the street. And the next day, what does he do? He changes his mind about his miserable life and goes on to help people.
It's so interesting because like I've watched the animation and I've seen it, and the main point was that he always kept his hands in his pockets, and I think it was a way of it was like almost a metaphor of that he's keeping all this, the ability to help people to himself. He was holding himself within. And I believe that if everybody took the chance and just you take your hands out of your pockets and you do a kind gesture for somebody else, you're doing more than you could ever imagine. Because I'd say this is something that's common with a lot of guys that I've talked to and heard from, is that when you give a guy a compliment, they remember for a really long time. And again, I can't say, oh, women don't, because, well, I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't know.
There you go.
But as a man, I can tell you that when somebody gives you a compliment, like, hey, you know what? I like what you did with your hair today, or I really like that outfit you're wearing, or you did a good job today, man. Those are the kinds of things that when a man hears, that's going to stick with them. And that makes their day that much better.
Well, yeah, one example for me was I was dropping Eric off after the gym, and we kind of sat in the car and we were having a bit of a deep conversation, right? And his mom walked out of the house and was going on her late night walk. She walked up to the car and was like, "Oh, what's going on, guys? How are you doing? How was the workout?" We were like, "Oh, it's all good." Then she was like, "I heard you hit a PR last week. Good job. I'm really proud of you." I was like, "What? Okay, thank you. I appreciate
So
that."
nice.
I'm gonna remember that forever. Obviously, I mean, it was a good PR for me. It was a tough struggle and everything, and I worked hard to get there, right? So I appreciate the the compliment on that.
Exactly.
Right? And you remember those things. But the interesting thing about that cartoon is at the end of the animation, what happens? Actually, I don't know if this is the end, but I know that at the end of one clip of the animation,
Yeah, I know.
he sees someone else with his hands in his pockets. So what does he do? He walks up to him and forces him into the same situation with that old lady.
I remember because he pretended to be blind.
Exactly.
That's what he did.
He pretends
And it's
to be blind.
interesting because the way that the animation, like with the old lady, is when she's holding his hand. The only reason he took his hand out of his pocket was because a car almost hit him. That's why he took his hand out of his pocket to signal to the car, like, stop. And to me, that's so powerful because all it takes is one act, one moment to change somebody's perspective. And for both of us, one thing was starting to listen to our like other podcasts that talked about this kind of thing, and really starting to look at the world in a different way. And all it took was one moment, one time that you do the right thing, and that's going to change your mind. And for me, when I, for example, am working late in a drive-thru and somebody pulls up and, you know, they got a smile on their face and I give them their food and they say, have a great shift, man. To me, that just puts a smile on my face for the next 8 hours that I might be working. Because to me, that shows that person cares. And I'm absorbing that positivity that person's putting out there. And now I'm going to spread that positivity back out to all the other people that might roll through the drive-thru. And again, it's just this domino effect, this butterfly effect, where this can chain forever. Yeah. You can keep going.
But that's the thing. It's really important to understand who's around you. And also to understand that you have a lot to give in this world.
Yeah.
But first, I'll start with who's around you. And I believe that you and I have had a fair amount of experience with other people. I'd say everyone has had experience with other people. You've had negative experiences. You've had positive experiences. But let's focus on your friends. Who are your friends? Are they really your friends? Or are they focused on themselves and they just see you as a tool to meet their own ends? I don't mean go into every single interaction thinking that somebody's trying to take advantage of you. Because I think that that's a very negative negative viewpoint to have on the world. And you're going to leave that impact on everybody else around you as well if you continue to think like that. And I learned this the most because, I'll be honest, when I was in high school, obviously, high school is all a popularity contest. That's all it is. People try to glorify how popular you are in high school, but the second you graduate,
it's all gone.
Life gets real. It's not about how many friends you had, or rather, I can't even call them friends, how many acquaintances you had. That's what I'll call them. Because realistically, you know all these people in high school, but after you graduate, you don't talk to any of them. Out of all the people I was still friends with in high school, yeah, I have all of their contact information. I might snap a few of them on occasion and message them every once in a while. But in terms of good friends, very, very few are still by my side. So at the end of the day, you have to pick and choose the right people for your company. Because as we said, humans are sponges. And another good analogy is, in the same way that iron sharpens iron, so does a true friend. So
Yeah.
you need good people around you if you want to continuously get better at life. That's the truth. You need people who have, number one, a positive outlook. Number two, aren't afraid to try new things. And number three, are willing to stick by your side through anything.
And number 4, like I'd say, well, I'm kind of building off of your point here, and I think one of the most important things to look for in a friend is somebody that pushes you, and not somebody that holds you back. You don't want to anchor; you want wings.
Damn, that's a
what,
good one. I like that.
Because you want these people to lift you up. If somebody is constantly, you can't call people friends that hold you back. And if you want to go for your dreams, and like for example, your friends are telling you like, "Hey man, come on, like I don't think let's not do it today. How about we go tomorrow?" Right? Like maybe you sit down with your friend like, "Hey man, come on, we gotta start hitting the gym. Like, what are we doing?" And he's like, "You know what, man? I had a lot to eat today. Let's just go to the bar and chill for tonight, and then tomorrow we'll hit the gym." Is that really a friend right there?
No.
Because you may think, "Hey, that's my pal. We go and drink. We drink together." But what are you guys doing to move forward? Is that really what you want to do with your life? If your friend says delay work for gratification now, then I don't think that's your friend.
Exactly. And the biggest question is ask yourself, what do you want?
Mm.
Because it's not, I'm not saying follow this one guideline of, oh, if your friend wants to party, they're a bad friend.
Yeah,
No.
of course.
If you want to party and they want to party and it aligns with what your current path in life is, by all means, go ahead. But if you know you have a project or a deliverable or something that you should be working on, or maybe something you want to be working on, right? It's not always about what you have to do. Sometimes it's what you want to do.
Yeah,
Peer pressure is a real thing.
it is.
You might avoid those tasks that you want to do to go do these things with people that you really don't care that much about. And I'll say that because in high school, like I was saying, that was me. I put up this facade, this persona. I'm not really that guy. I tried to be that guy because, A, when I was playing ice hockey or when I'm hanging out with all these people that I'm now friends with because I'm way more known because of the things I do now, it's still disappointing because when I look back on my life, if my life was a white plate, okay, those 2 years in high school, grade 10 and 11, I feel like are a dark smudge on my white plate of a life, okay? And I obviously can't go back and scrub it off because it's in the past, right? But I've learned that dark smudge is a constant reminder to me every time I look at my plate of life that I never want to put a dark smudge like that again, where I'm living my life for other people.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for those 2 years, and I could not tell you a time where I was more miserable than the years where I wasn't myself.
See, that's interesting. That's like I love that so much, that analogy of the white plate, because the most influential form of self-improvement is self-reflection. And when we reflect, what we see is not always the truth. What we see sometimes is what other people have put in our brains to see. Because peers influence our vision of ourselves. If you're a millionaire hanging out with people making minimum wage, you're going to feel like the man. You're going to feel like, hey, I'm here and they're here. I'm better. But then you go into the room full of billionaires and you're like, damn, I am really not doing anything. Like these guys are, they're buying tons of real estate, man. What am I doing with my Ferrari? I should have bought that house down the street. But instead I bought a Ferrari. What am I doing? I could have been making more money. Now you see yourself as a failure because you're not at the success that other people are at.
You know what they say? If you're the most successful guy in the room,
You're in the wrong room.
damn right. That's why it's always important. You got to be shooting for the stars. And you got to be with people who are also aiming there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I feel like so many people nowadays let other people's perceptions of them ruin who they could be. Especially, I think that it's especially learned in high school.
Yeah.
You learn that you don't want to be known as the guy who did that one thing that everybody remembers you for. You don't want to be the guy who embarrassed himself trying to take a leap of faith and doing something new. You don't want to be that guy. So instead, sit there in that classroom with your textbook open and your eyes glued to the page like everybody else. Be average. Because if you try to stand out, you're going to look weird. Well, guess
It's
what, buddy?
true.
Looking weird is the only way to get to your dreams. Looking weird is the only way you're going to do anything in this life. Everything in life is weird. You ever thought about that? What part of human existence is normal? What part of human existence is natural in any way, shape, or form? It's not. you can't rationalize what human beings do on a daily basis.
That's so interesting to me because it's so true. There's not another species out there that'll sit and do nothing for a day that, for example, where it doesn't make sense. Like a lion might sleep for like 18 hours a day, but because the hours that it's up, it's running around, it's chasing, it's hunting in like the super barren heat. We live in perfectly air conditioned homes, and some people will still, and again, this is not slander towards people that do this, it's just trying to understand the human mind, who will just sit down and just do nothing. Maybe scroll or watch a TV show. And again, I'm not saying I'm not guilty of this because we're all guilty of it. But it's just the understanding of, man, we are not the same as many other species. And it's hard to understand why that is. Oh, well, it is actually not too hard to understand. We are far more complex than than any other species out there.
So let me ask you. We are abnormal in terms of nature. Okay? No other species does what we do. But tell me, what species is at the top of the food chain in theory?
Us.
Absolutely. There's no other species that dominates the planet like we do. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing in all aspects because I believe we damage the planet beyond repair in many aspects. But then again, there are also people who save the planet and do try to fix things, like the Ocean Cleanup Project, how they're removing the whole, Pacific? It's in the Pacific, right? The Great Garbage Patch.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, well, I know that there's a huge garbage patch in the ocean and they're cleaning it up, right? So obviously within us, there's still people who do good, okay? And overall, I believe the average person tries to make a good decision for the rest of the world most of the time, right? Every now and then there are people who, will litter, but for the most part, you try your best to keep the environment clean, to take care of the rest of the world, right? But let me ask you this, right? As a species, we are odd. Yet we're at the top of the food chain. Why is that? Because we took a leap of faith and we did things that no other species does.
To do. That's interesting. Oh my God.
So,
I'll let you finish,
do you think that humans that reach that upper echelon of life are people who decided to be average and do the same things that everybody else around them does? No. They decided to do something different, to do something crazy, to follow their passions, to light that spark within them to be something great. And what happens? Yeah, some people burn out. But that's life. Some species go extinct trying to do the things that we did. And yet here we are. So obviously, don't be average and try your best. Leap, take that jump, and do the thing you're passionate about.
And also be prepared, or make sure that the people around you are prepared to jump as well. Because a leap of faith is far less scary when you're jumping with more people.
Damn, that's good.
Right?
That's really good, yeah. Because think about it. If you go skydiving by yourself, God, I'd be terrified. Or even, take this example. I'm not a big fan of going on roller coasters or amusement park, like theme rides or anything.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not a big fan of them. But if I'm with my homies and we hop on a roller coaster, like the wooden roller coaster at the P&E, I probably would not have gone on that by myself. But all the homies sat in line for 2 hours to get on that line or get on the train. So I'm like, okay, you know what? We'll do it. Full send. So with them, it's easy to do.
Yeah.
But by yourself, seems much less accomplishable. And that's an interesting point because one thing is making sure that the people around you are aligned with your views and goals. But also, you can't isolate yourself so much to the point where you have nobody around you. You have to pick and choose the people you need, but you also can't be by yourself. You got to have a team at the end of the day. Maybe they're not doing exactly what you're doing, but you need people around you. Humans are still social creatures. That's why you see people claiming that they're extremely depressed. Majority of the time, it's because they're lonely.
Yeah, and loneliness is such a destructive thing. That is something that will break you. And the truth is, a lot of people feel lonely even when they're not alone. Which is because when we feel pain and things that we don't want to share, we just try to isolate ourselves, which is just something that's common amongst a lot of humans. And that's also, again, it's a stigma around a lot of, especially I'd say men on average, where it's, you don't want to talk about your emotions. Now, I don't say don't practice being a stoic person, as in somebody who tries to make decisions based more on logic as opposed to emotions. But I think that it's important to deal with those problems too. It's not bury it away. And if you're dealing with your problems by maybe hitting the gym or trying to be better, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
People think like, oh man, this kid's depressed, so he's in the gym and he's working out. Like, oh, that's terrible. He should be going to a therapist. It's no, everybody has their own form of therapy.
Mm.
For me, when I get mad, I come downstairs and I box. That's what I do because that's my best way to get that anger, that pain off of my chest.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, it's lifting weights. Think about that one time we got into that very serious fight. What did I do?
You went to the gym.
I
did.
called Eric in a fit of rage. I didn't even have the car. I had to Uber to the gym. I was that ready to go and lift weights. And that day, I hit several PRs because of how angry I was, right? But I called Eric. I said, yo, meet me at the gym in 30 minutes. He was like, bet, I'll be there. And that's another thing. It's important to have a homie who would do that for you.
Exactly.
This guy was at the mall in dress pants and a shirt, and I brought him clothes so that he could change and work out with me. Right?
That's really interesting to me.
Exactly.
Because,
Shout out all the real friends out there.
You need to have real friends out there. But now this is something that we did talk about, and I did want to touch upon it on here on the podcast, and that is competitive nature. Because
Here we go.
We did talk about how you need to have people to elevate yourselves. Now, we have opposing stances on this. And I think, yes, it is important to be competitive, but you shouldn't want to be better than everybody else. Now, I want you to present that's like the topic. We're going to have a little bit of a formal debate.
Okay,
here.
this is the
Now,
debate.
I want you to go ahead.
Okay, so you want me to present my evidence for why I should want to be better than everyone? Okay, I claim that I would want to be better than everyone in everything that matters to me. Not necessarily everything that is, let's say, for example, my friend is a really good ballerina. I don't want to be better than him or her at ballerina dancing. I want to be the best at, for example, lifting weights, or I want to be the best at chess, or I want to be the best at hockey. Whatever it is, I want to be the best. It's in my nature. It was engraved in me from the beginning of my life that I want to be the best. We were taught to win. We were put in all these extracurricular programs by our parents. Why is that? So we could develop more skills and intermingle with other people, right? We could develop friendships through martial arts or sports or other clubs, but also so that we could be better, so that we could win, so that we could do things that the average person cannot.
Okay. Now, for my counter, this is really the only point I have, but I feel like it's point enough. And what it is simply that when you become competitive and you say, hey, I want to be better than everybody else, now your success is measured on what everybody else is doing. And that is the biggest problem in life, is where everybody is so overconsumed and concerned with how is everybody around me doing. Because that is the biggest killer in today's society. I have seen it. I have seen it amongst so many people that I talk to, and it breaks because I've seen it on both sides of the spectrum. I'd say I'm a relatively smart academic guy, but sometimes there are people smarter than me, and I talk to them, and I'm like, damn, you're so smart. You're getting such good grades. You're doing so phenomenal. And then they tell me, no, there's people out there doing way better than me. There's people getting 100% in all their classes. I'm like, that's true, but there are people out here failing too. You are doing very well. It's just that your metric of success is the wrong person.
I think you officially broke me.
Right?
Because
I told you I would. I told you I would.
Oh, man.
And this hurts me because I walk into class and I see these guys that go in there and they just goof off and they get a bad grade. They're like, okay, whatever. It's all I can do. Because what they're doing is they're comparing themselves to the smartest people in the room. And they say, oh, this guy's getting this because he's studying all day. There's no way that I'm going to do that. There's no way I could get a grade as good as this guy, so I'm not going to do it. Why are you so concerned with what he's getting? Who cares what he's getting? Who cares what that other person down the line is getting? What are you getting? And what were you getting yesterday? And what are you going to get tomorrow?
Dude, okay, here's the thing. Right before, this is a moment here. Right before we started recording this episode, this guy said, I'm going to call you out about your competitive nature. I thought, in my 20 years of living, not once has someone called me out about my ego and my competitive nature and said it was a bad thing and then proven themselves right. And yet here I stand. Mark the date, ladies and gentlemen, December 13th. December 14th. This man proved me wrong. And now, honestly, I'm going to have to agree with you because it is true. There is a very significant amount of people who gauge their success based on what other people are doing. And I think that while it's important to have reference into other people's lives, you shouldn't base your success, your progress, or your happiness, most importantly, on what other people are doing.
Exactly. I feel like aspiration is one of the strongest things in the world. We started training hard and going crazy because we learned about David Goggins. And you see him, you're like, man, how does that guy do that? I want to do that. And then you'll go and you'll train hard. But that doesn't mean, hey, I want to be better than this guy. And if I don't get better than him, that means I failed. No, it should be, man, I may want to be better than him. I may never reach him. But that doesn't mean that I haven't succeeded. If I started not being able to run a mile, and by the end of this, I can run 10 miles, well, David Goggin can run 200 miles. Does that mean I didn't succeed?
No.
Damn it, bro, I can run 10 times as far as I could before.
Yep.
Is that not success?
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly, right?
However, I will still play the counterpoint here that while it's important to focus on yourself and definitely have appreciation of where you've come, you still need to be competitive enough to push yourself.
I agree completely. But the person who you should be the most competitive with
Should be yourself.
exactly.
That's true.
The person you see in the
Very
mirror
true.
every single day.
I mean, it's funny. The man himself said, if you can do two things, you'll be successful in life. First one is work really, really, really hard. The second is be proud of yourself.
And who said this?
Andrew Tate. I'm
Okay.
surprised you didn't see it.
I've never seen that clip. But
Really?
I feel
Interesting.
like after you said the first point, I was like, okay, I could probably guess who said that.
Okay, yeah.
But
But it's interesting because that's true, right? If you really break it down, what is important? Number one, you need to be competitive enough to push yourself. You need to work hard. You need to strive for those goals. But then the second point is equally as important, being proud of yourself. Because if you work hard every day and then you look at the millionaire down the street and say, I'm not at his level yet, I'm a failure, you will not be happy. And I don't think that you should be happy all the time because, let's be honest, I mean, things are going to happen, but you should try to be happy as often as you can. And as always, I will say that happiness is a state of mind, not an emotion. Happiness isn't an emotion.
I love that quote so much. Did you come up with that, or has somebody said it before?
I've never heard somebody say it, but I'm sure that somebody in human history has said it, but I never took it from
For
anyone.
the time being, until somebody tells, like, if somebody in the comments lets us know that we are wrong, you have coined that statement.
Yeah.
That will be your quote.
Happiness is a state of mind, not an emotion.
Like, I love that because I guarantee you we will refer to this. I mean, someday we'll probably plaster it up somewhere in the studio here.
I like that. Yeah, yeah.
I
you're
think
right.
that it's a brilliant
brilliant move.
Definitely a brilliant. Yeah, it's a brilliant move, brilliant quote.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think again it all ties back to this idea of perspective, and it's also again perspective of yourself. That's the most important thing. Is who do you see when you look in the mirror? Because the truth is, two people, like suppose that it's the same person, can look in the mirror and see one thing, and the same person could wake up a different day and see another person in the mirror. It's all about what you're thinking, what you're absorbing. If you're absorbing all negativity, that's going to be projected on you almost. It's kind of like, if you think about it, imagine your mind is like a projector. And whatever film you put into your mind is what's going to roll on that projector. Now, imagine the mirror is just the screen that you're playing this video on. Now, you've absorbed all this garbage of people telling you that you're not good enough, that you're depressed, that you're anxious, that you're broken, that you aren't worth anything. Now, you play that film back. You wake up in the morning and you see, what do you see? A depressed, anxious, lonely loser.
But if you flip it,
If you flip it, and now you're running, hey, you know what? You did this today. You took a step today. You moved forward today. You did better today. You aren't alone. You have people around you. People care about you. That's the film that's going to run, and you're going to see a person that is cared about, that is loved, that is treasured.
and on that screen, you simply see the projection of what's in your mind.
Exactly.
That's genius.
The most important thing is what film are you putting in there?
Damn. Yeah.
And it's
True.
also that this is an analogy I love about life, and it being that either there's two analogies, is either life is a movie or life is a book. I don't know why I tend to prefer the book version. For some reason, I don't know why. I'm not even a big reader. I would much prefer to watch a movie. But there's something about it being a book that is just it's so insightful to me. I don't know why.
There are two
Maybe
reasons.
it's just more powerful, but
There are two reasons.
Why
I'll
do you
quickly
think?
interject.
yeah.
First of all, with a book, I think a book is associated much more with intellectual behavior and art. While I believe movies are an art form of themselves,
Yeah.
a book is written. That's all you can see are words. So getting a vivid point across takes much more skill and artistry
Yeah.
than using visuals with a
I-
movie.
I do, yeah.
And the second point is, people will say this phrase, "My life is a movie," and then go out and drink, party, and club until they die, broke and living a mediocre life, right? So I don't like that connotation of my life is a movie.
Yeah. It's interesting too because I think that books will always leave behind more knowledge than movies.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I think that in the end, what you leave behind is all that matters.
Mm.
When you go on this earth, right, you're taking with you, or what you're leaving behind is what you put down.
Mm.
You can't come back in the afterlife and pick it back up.
Mhm.
It's there to stay. So you better be conscious about what you're putting down.
Yeah.
Because if you step through your whole life leaving behind horrible things and you're gone, that's the memory people are going to have of you.
Very true. Very true.
And to me, with the writing the book is, what kind of book do you want it to be? And what do you want the other people in this book to be like? Nobody wanted to write side characters as horrible characters.
Mm.
Whenever an author writes a book, they love to write about how good their side characters are and how they push the hero to do better. Now, again, you're the hero in your story. That's just the truth. That's the scary thing is nowadays, people are starting to idolize others so much that they refuse to see that they are, I know it's cliche, but the main character in your own story. This is your life. But instead, you're so overconsumed in everybody else's.
Yeah.
Like people that follow every celebrity drama. Cool, maybe that's a hobby for you, but why don't you follow your own life?
Well, think about it. What you said there is powerful. Maybe that's a hobby for you.
Yeah,
A hobby. Following celebrities may be a hobby, but it shouldn't be a lifestyle.
exactly.
You can't center your life around other people and what other people are doing or what other people think all the time. That's why, for example, I'm in a Discord with some of my friends. And on several occasions, I wanted to message him and be like, dude, what are you doing? Because this guy will consistently update the server with new information about new artist drama or new music being dropped or new situations. It could be as obscure as an Easter egg in Fortnite or as major as the Kanye album being dropped. They follow every bit of news regarding these things. And while I bear no animosity to him because I'd still say that we are still friends on a maybe not a super deep level, but we're still friends. And if I saw him in person, I'm sure he'd be pretty chill. I don't bear any animosity to him. But I still have to ask myself, dude, is that really what you want to be doing with your time? Looking
Yeah.
at what everybody else is doing instead of yourself?
Yeah, and I think it's something that Kevin Hart talks about is, well, I hope it's Kevin Hart. I'm pretty sure that he's the one that said it on a podcast. And he talks and he says, when I sit down to talk with somebody, of course I'm going to talk about myself. Who the hell else am I going to talk about? And I'm
Sounds like what he'd say.
yeah, and of course I did slightly change the paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But the truth is, when you start going out and you start, or for example, when you have kids, everybody talks about the dad lore of, man, my dad, he just drops the craziest stories at random times. Do you really want to be the dad that says, hey, man, you know what, kiddo? You know what kind of life I lived back in my day? I watched Netflix for 6 hours a day.
Or better yet, kiddo, you know what's crazy? Uncle Steven did this crazy thing one time.
Oh, my.
You don't want to be talking other
Yeah.
people's stories. You want to tell your kids your story, what
Exactly.
you did.
And again, do you want to leave behind somebody else's book? What's the point of that? Because guess what? You didn't add anything to the world.
Yeah.
When we all leave, we leave behind a story.
Yeah.
And if you leave behind somebody else's story, then what did you really do with your time on Earth?
Think about Earth as a library. You are an author. You are writing a story. So what is the point in writing a story that somebody else has already written?
Exactly.
You're not adding anything to the library here.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. You want to leave behind a unique work, a masterpiece. I believe everyone's life is meant to be a masterpiece. You are destined for greatness, for something that you will find eventually. Number one, you got to keep your eyes open. And number two, you got to keep writing.
That's the truth. And I love that you have to keep writing because people we want to relax. But the truth is, when does a story relax? It's at the end. On that falling action. That's where the story starts to slow down.
But
Because
think about
that's
it.
where it's done. That's
Exactly.
where you've hit the peak. Now it's time to relax and slow
Exactly.
down.
You want to see famous, I guess, an instance of that. Avatar: The Last Airbender, one of the greatest shows of all time. Look at Mr. Uncle Iroh, okay?
Yeah.
The GOAT himself, what does he do? He spends his whole life running around the entire globe with his nephew, And then at the end of it, what does he do? He settles down, opens a tea shop, and lives his life.
And to me, and then after that, again, spoilers for Korra, for those of you that haven't watched that. But after, he puts himself into the spirit realm.
Mm.
Because that way he can continue to live this just,
Peaceful.
peaceful, thank you. I was going to say chill life, but I was like, that's not an accurate way I would describe it.
Yeah.
But I'd say a peaceful life,
Mm-hmm.
a calm life. Because now he has that story to tell.
Yeah.
And again, when was he at his most miserable? It was when he lost his son
Mm.
and when he lost in Ba Sing Se, the
Yeah.
war. And what was he doing during that war? He wasn't fighting for his dream. He was fighting for
someone else's.
exactly. He's fighting for
Wow.
Azulon's dream of taking over Ba Sing Se and expanding the Fire. Or if you want to go all the way back, Sozin's dream of expanding the Fire Nation.
Yeah.
And then again, throughout his life, this is the really crazy thing to me is that people might think, oh well, what about him and Zuko? He was chasing Zuko's dream the whole time of trying to capture the Avatar, but no,
he wasn't.
his dream
Was to help.
exactly
Zuko. Oh
was
my
to change
God.
Zuko, to fix Zuko, and he succeeded in that too. And he put himself on the line by getting Zuko super angry at him.
Mm.
Like, think about their furious fight that they had, and then in like the catacombs of Ba Sing Se.
Yeah, I was about
And
to say.
then they completely split off from each other. And then he comes back, and what does Iroh say? Is, I was never angry at you. I was scared that you lost your way. Now, I'm about to pull the craziest thing ever. I'm going to link this back to the last episode where we talked about helping people. And you were talking about how sometimes if somebody, you got to let people go. Iroh never let him go. And he was never angry that he took the wrong path.
Hey, all I'm saying is, who said Uncle Iroh when you said who never turned somebody away from help?
I have to
That's
admit,
me.
that is,
That's all
I
me.
agree. But that to me is so deep that Iroh was never angry at him. And I think the same way we should never be angry at people that take the wrong path.
Yeah,
We should be scared for them. And we should try to help them back.
yeah.
But never be angry. Because again, what does that do?
It doesn't help anyone.
It makes it so much worse.
Very true.
Because again, you're feeding into the negative mind. When people do wrong things, it's because they're not in the right mindset. They don't see themselves as worthful, so they go out and do stupid things to try and gain worth. They try to go out to the pub and make more friends by drinking and doing all this stuff because they think that all people think I'm the life of the party. People think that I'm that guy. I'm that guy that goes crazy on the dance floor. Because they want everybody else to think, hey, this guy's sick. Because now in your mind, you don't feel like you're really anything anymore. So
Yeah.
you seek that satisfaction from somebody
Other
else.
people.
Now imagine now the people that were closest to you, that knew you the best, that knew you for who you really were, those people think you're worthless now because you took the wrong path.
Mm,
Think about how much that feeds into the negative mindset.
true.
It
True.
ruins it. It makes it so much worse. And it's crazy. It's going back to that sponge. Is do you really want to add more dirt to that? Or do you want to help wash it off?
Very true. Very true. And it's an interesting story because a couple weeks ago, obviously, I went to the doctor. And I had a very long conversation with my doctor, which I'll say I've never had. Actually, no, this is maybe the third time that I've done this. But I've learned that everyone has a story, right? Everyone's an author, like I said. They write an interesting story. And I'll say the most wisdom lies in those authors that have been writing for a long time. They have experience writing.
Yeah.
So when you ask them, hey, what did you do in this situation? Or hey, maybe how did you discover your passion? Those questions are very meaningful and you can find a lot of insight in some unexpected places. So as I sat there in the chair, getting my checkup done for being a little bit sick, as I'm about to leave, I said, hey, doctor, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? And he laughed for a minute and he let me guess. And then he said, well, I'm 60 years old. Kind of shocked me. He does look a lot younger than 60 years old. Okay. But I asked him, how long have you been doing this for? He said, 30 years. I said, do you like what you do? He said, absolutely. I love every bit of what I do, including when I was in school, which is crazy because a lot of people don't like what they do in school,
Yeah, exactly.
thinking that they'll like what they do at work with said degree. And he said, if you don't like what you do, maybe that's not what you should be doing, but don't be quick to give up on everything.
Mm.
But the most important point I got from him was when he was trying to apply to medical school, when he was going to be a doctor, people asked him, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, well, I'm going to be a doctor. And all the people around him said, dude, you're crazy. Why would you do that? School takes so long. You're never going to get into med school. All these things are going to be difficult. Why would you do that to yourself? There's no way you're getting in. And then I said, how did you deal with all these people telling you you're not going to get into med school? And he said, I just stopped telling them.
Wow.
I just stopped telling them. So sometimes you have to be able to discard other people's opinions. Because everyone has an opinion. You got to do your own thing. You got to focus on your own dream and go for it. Because you got one shot at it.
You know, that's so interesting to me. Because if we could almost loop this all the way back to the beginning of this episode where we were talking about comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine if every comedian, the second somebody said, hey, that joke is offensive, they took it out of the arsenal. Because there's so many people out there that would have found that so funny.
There you go.
And it's relating it back to life is you have a gift. And when you don't pursue that gift, you're robbing the entire world of what you have to give.
Exactly.
And you're leaving behind one less story for everybody that comes after.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, I'd say, if you can't live life for yourself, understand that there are other people out there that want to see your life unfold.
Yeah.
And that would love to see your story. And I think that's such a powerful message because I think that sometimes as humans, we tend to not want to do things for ourselves because we don't see the value in it. What we do is we weigh, okay, watch Netflix on one side and go to the gym on the other side. Now, we'll say, hey, guess what? Maybe 10 years down the line, I'll have a nice body. But right now, man, I could watch that new episode of any show. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, let's say. Well, R.I.P.
Andre Braugher.
Andre Braugher. Absolute GOAT. I'm sorry. I kind of killed the mood
Yeah,
here.
I was so
I'm
sad
really
now.
sorry.
Oh, man.
But
okay, anyways.
that was just the first show that popped into my head. I'm so sorry. But anyways, moving back, you pick one side because you're like, you know what? It's going to give me the gratification now. Now, you chose to not write your story. Instead, you chose to leave that empty spot, to leave a boring paragraph in your life story.
Or maybe an empty page.
Exactly. And what is that worth to everybody else around you?
Mm-hmm.
Because now people aren't going to see who you really are.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one of the saddest things about life is not living up to your full potential.
Yeah. And the thing is, when I write my journal every night, cataloging what I did today, what I'm going to do tomorrow, my successes, my failures, right? The self-reflection. As you said earlier in this episode, self-reflection is the greatest asset to self-improvement. As I sit there and write these journals, every now and then there will be a day where I don't feel like writing and I get really tired or something happens. I'm sick. That's a good example because the past week I've been sick. In fact, I'm still a little bit sick, right? In those moments where I don't feel like writing, sometimes I don't, and I'll leave a blank page in the journal. And at the end of the book, when I'm done writing all 140 days worth of journals in my book, I'll go back and I'll look and see how many pages did I miss? How many blank ones are there? And every time I see that blank page, I feel disappointed because there could be a story. There could be a magical day, something new written in those lines, and yet it's empty. So the next time you go to think, man, maybe I'll skip that workout today. Or maybe I'll sit on the couch and just relax because I have a whole life ahead of me. Remember, you're leaving an empty page for those that go to read your story next.
And that is going to conclude our 4th episode of the Bright Horizons podcast. Thank you guys for sticking around, but stick around a little bit longer because before you guys go, we got a little gift for you. That is
Quote
of
the
week.
Yes, sir.
Hit it.
So today's quote, or rather this week's quote, is, we love ourselves more than we love other people, and yet we care more about their opinions than our own. Marcus Aurelius, the GOAT himself.
And I think that perfectly is like, it's like the knot.
The
bow tied at the end of this gift of an episode.
There you go.
Now, make sure you guys, if you haven't, check out the previous episodes. I know we referenced them a couple times. So make sure you're all caught up.
And most importantly, no, I'm going to let you say that.
Yeah.
But most importantly, chase your dreams, stick around with good people, and don't live your life for somebody else.
And make sure that you put positivity out into the world. And with that, make sure you live a positive life, y'all. Peace out.